everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad, and today is just going to be a very short chatty video. I'm going to be talking about the Stella Prize. What is the Stella Prize, you ask? Well, it is actually an Australian literary prize awarded to women, and mainly they focus on diverse women's fiction, which is amazing to have a local literary prize that is dedicated not only to women's writing but to bringing diversity into the literary genre. The shortlist has just been announced. I'm going to introduce the 6 books on the shortlist for this year. The final prize is going to be announced on the 12th of April, so not too long. So if you do want to read any of these books, tell me down below which ones you're interested in. I'm going to let you know which ones I'm interested in reading, but first off, let's get into the books. Number 1 is Terra Nullius by Claire Coleman. This one's actually incredibly interesting because it is about an alternate history of Australia. So when the white settlers came to Australia, they don't technically have dominance. So it's basically asking what would have happened if the Aboriginal society was given a certain sense of ownership and dominance over Australia, and what would happen to the country. I am incredibly interested in reading this one. It's got a great cover, and I think it will be a very interesting read because I'm not usually one for altered histories, but I think when done very well, it can really make you think about what is happening in the current society. Next is Life to Come by Michelle de Cresta. Michelle actually won the Miles Franklin Award for her book A Question of Travel, which was all about the refugee situation within Australia. But Life to Come seems a little bit more of a meditation of current society, of truths that we deny ourselves, and lies that we try to claim are truths. It looks quite interesting into the idea of loneliness, contemporary society, ethnicity, multicultural societies as well. So I think it's going to be a very interesting read. Michelle from the Crazy Book Lady is reading at the moment, and she says the writing is utterly superb. So if that sounds quite interesting to you, definitely check that one out. Now the next book, I definitely want to find a copy. It is called The Enlightenment of the Greengage Tree by Shukafit Azar. Now what is interesting about this one, it is actually set in Iran in 1979, very close after the Islamic Revolution, and how a family processes things, and how political prisoners and how the population was viewed by the people who had just recently come to power. And many of these people were citizens like themselves who are suddenly lifted to these points of power, and there's abuses and there's also confusion of power. So I think that would be absolutely amazing to read, especially in connection to, as I've just read, Home Fires, which deals with more Western society. I think it'll be interesting to see from an Iranian writer and how their perspective of the Iranian Revolution. Chrissy Neen's Uncertain Grace is a very interesting book. It's set in the near future, and a lecturer receives a virtual narrative from one of his past students, and in this narrative it's basically like a virtual reality suit that he puts on. So as he hooks himself into this narrative, he actually discovers that their secret sexual history that they shared, he gets to live it from her perspective. So I think that is amazing, actually portraying a female's narrative to be experienced by a man, which is quite rare, I think. So it'll be very interesting to see how that kind of gender plays out in this book. So if you have read it or you are thinking of reading it, let me know down below. It sounds really interesting. I don't think it's going to be one that I'm going to pick up straight away, but it's definitely one that has piqued my interest. Next one is actually a novella, so I'm definitely going to pick this one up. It is Miranda Wuhrl's The Fish Girl. Now she actually wrote this story as a bit of a companion novel, very similar to think of The Wide Sargasso Sea, which was for Jane Eyre in The Mad Wife. This is actually comparing Somerset Maugham, who was a writer in probably the late Victorian, early Edwardian period, and he travelled around a lot, especially going into the early 1920s after the war. But his story, The Four Dutchmen, has a certain character called the Malay Trollop, and she wanted to give voice and story and history and consequence to this girl who is seen in a blink of an eye in Maugham's story, who is just labelled the Malay Trollop and basically branded as a prostitute, and that's all she is known, and that is all she is good for in the story. That's all she is. She doesn't need to be anything else. So I think this is incredibly powerful, and I really like the idea of going back into classic stories and to really give character and voice to people who were voiceless. Lastly, we have Alexis Wright. Now, she's written the book called Tracker. This is actually a memoir, I believe, of a very prominent Aboriginal man called Tracker Tilmoth, who died in 2015 in Darwin. He was quite prominent within the Aboriginal community for getting Aboriginal rights, and he was very politically orientated. So it actually tracks Tracker's life, excuse the pun, as he creates land rights and self-determination for the Aboriginal population of Australia. So those are the 6 books that have been shortlisted for the Stella Prize this year. Incredibly diverse and various topics. I am not sure who's going to win because I haven't read these books myself, but at the moment I'm definitely interested in looking into the Enlightenment of the Greengage tree and the Fish Girl. I think within the time period that I've set myself to read them, which is like a month, they're probably going to be the 2 that I can get to. If you are going to read any of these books or you're interested in finding out more, I'll link the Stella Prize website down below. You can actually read excerpts of the novels on there, and you can find out more about the authors themselves. So I hope you enjoyed this more chattier video where I get to talk about some amazing, diverse women's literature that is being celebrated in Australia at the moment. So happy reading. I'll see you next time. Bye!